Imagine this. It's 7:12 a.m. A kitchen light flicks on. One adult leaves for work. The other stays home, not because they want to, but because the math said they had to. In 2026, this is no longer a lifestyle choice. It's a financial survival tactic. Families aren't choosing one income. They're being pushed into it. And the uncomfortable truth is this. For millions of households, two incomes don't actually mean more money anymore. They mean more risk. That's why this topic matters right now. Because the economy, everyone talks about growth, jobs, opportunity, and the economy families actually live in are drifting further apart every year. Let's slow this down and look at what's really happening. For decades, the modern household model was simple. Two adults, two incomes, more security. If one job disappeared, the other caught the fall. That logic made sense when wages rose. Childcare was manageable, and housing didn't behave like a speculative asset. But somewhere along the way, the system inverted. By 2026, the second income often doesn't add freedom. It plugs holes. Here's how. Start with the obvious expense everyone underestimates: childcare. In many cities, full-time childcare now rivals rent. Sometimes it exceeds it. So a second income comes in and immediately goes out. Daycare, transportation, higher taxes, more convenience spending because no one has time. What's left isn't a paycheck, it's residue. Now add the quieter costs. Two jobs means two schedules to juggle, more sick days, more burnout, more reliance on paid solutions for problems that used to be solved with time. Cooking becomes delivery. Errands become services. Exhaustion becomes a line item. The system quietly charges you for being busy. This is where families start making a counterintuitive decision. They run the numbers and realize something unsettling. If one parent steps out of the workforce, the household doesn't lose half its income. It loses far less. Because that income was already spoken for. This is the first uncomfortable reveal. The second income often exists just to sustain the second income. And once families see that, everything changes. Now let's zoom out. Housing is the real pressure point. Mortgage payments, rent increases, property taxes. They don't care how many incomes you have. They just demand consistency. That's why one-income families in 2026 aren't reckless. They're conservative. They want one predictable engine instead of two fragile ones. Because layoffs aren't random anymore. They're cyclical. They come in waves. And households built on two necessary incomes are structurally brittle. If one fails, the entire system collapses. So, families simplify. They downsize. They move farther out. They trade square footage for solvency. Not because they romanticize minimalism, but because volatility is expensive. Now here's the part no one advertises. Publicly, the narrative says dual-income households are empowered, flexible, modern. Privately, many of them are exhausted and overextended. The hype says more work equals more opportunity. The reality says more work equals higher fixed costs. And fixed costs are the enemy of resilience. One-income households in 2026 aren't richer. They're tighter. Tighter budgets. Tighter margins. Tighter control. They structure life around one stable cash flow and treat everything else as optional. Side work becomes seasonal. Freelance becomes opportunistic. Not required. There's a difference. Now let's talk about incentives. Governments still measure economic health by employment participation, not household stability. Corporations still design benefits assuming two earners, not one. And the tax code quietly penalizes households that try to simplify. So why does the one-income model persist? Because families aren't optimizing for GDP. They're optimizing for survival. They're responding to a system that punishes complexity and rewards predictability. Ironically, the more uncertain the economy becomes, the more old-fashioned financial behavior looks intelligent. One income, one budget, one set of risks. Now zoom forward 5 or 10 years. This trend doesn't just affect families. It reshapes labor markets. When one parent steps out, competition increases for fewer primary jobs. Wages don't rise. They compress. Employers gain leverage. Flexibility becomes scarce. And households become even more dependent on a single employer behaving well. That's the long-term risk. A society quietly rebuilding itself around one-income households is also rebuilding fragility. Because when that one income fails, there's no backup, no buffer, no redundancy. Just a pause. And then a crisis, which leads to the final irony. The one-income family of 2026 isn't nostalgic. They're not chasing tradition. They're reacting to a system that made dual-income life too expensive to maintain. They didn't opt out of modern economics. Modern economics opted out of them. So here's the unresolved question. If a single income is now the safer choice, what does that say about the system that made two incomes feel dangerous? And more importantly, what happens when even one income is no longer enough?